Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're covering one of my favorite pay-per-views, the greatest in-your-house pay-per-view of all the time, and one of the best non-major shows in wrestling history. It's In Your House Canadian Stampede, and I feel like in some ways this is about as close to a perfect pay-per-view as you can put on.
This is as close to a template for a perfect pay-per-view as you can possibly get. And I think we've mentioned on the show before that like our dream is that all pay-per-views would be just 2 hours and that you
Oh,
could not have to put literally every single member of the entire roster on every single one and guys could get breaks and but this is such a template. You've got a strong title match, you've got a big time main event, you've got some great opener, like an undercard feud that's really hot, and like a great flying opener. This is a perfect show. It's as close to one as you can possibly synthesize.
yeah. Just 2 hours long, four matches, and they're all great.
Yeah. Now, granted, when they put this show together, I'm sure they didn't know that all of these matches would be great. On paper, there's a lot of potential problems that could have unraveled the show. It just happens to all work out. But even so, like
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Well, two of these matches have substitutes in them, and the other one has zero build at all and was never mentioned on TV before this show.
Right.
So it just all came together.
Yeah, it really did. So it may not. When I say it's the template, you can't exactly just like put it on paper and have it all work like this. But just having a show be 2 hours was so refreshing. To sit down and watch this and never get bored because it doesn't go on so long that I stop giving a shit halfway through is magic.
And you know what this is a good version of? Is NWO Sold Out.
Yes.
Like, this is Bizarro World. The Hearts are hometown heroes in Calgary. They are hated heels in America, but absolutely beloved in Canada, and especially in Calgary. And so Steve Austin, the hottest baby face in professional wrestling at this point, gets to play a total stone cold heel. It's just for one night, everything's going to be different. But like, I don't think any fan would be confused as to why that was watching it. They drive home hard. This is Calgary. This is the home of the Hearts. They're the good guys here.
Well, throughout the course of the night, Vince McMahon is very worried that his fans won't understand.
Yeah.
So, like, they go out of their way repeatedly to be like, it's reverse everything. This is the Bizarro world. Get ready for things to not be what you expect.
Yeah. So this show takes place in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the hometown of the legendary Hart family, the home of the Dungeon, the home of Stampede Wrestling. It takes place during the Calgary Stampede. That's the biggest thing in Calgary. The huge rodeo, the parades, barbecues. It's the biggest event in the city, and they just happen to have timed it perfectly where the pay-per-view is going to be there. And what fortune and coincidence they just happen to be doing a pay-per-view in Calgary for the only time ever, just as Bret Hart is at his very hottest.
That's the thing. Is that like, again, like you might think that they plan this stuff out in advance, or that like, oh, that Bret Hart's getting pretty over, let's do a pay-per-view in Calgary. They've had this shit on the books for like a year.
Yeah, they booked these like a year in advance. They knew they were going to be in Calgary in the summer of '96 when they didn't even know if Bret Hart was still going to be on their roster.
Yeah. In fact, Bret Hart had been dealing with so many injuries that like coming into this, he's not healthy. There's no guarantee he's going to be able to do this show.
Oh no, he's not 100% here. You can see he's limping, but he was not going to miss this match.
Yeah, of the people in the Hart Foundation, both he and Pillman are big question marks.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been a crazy and tumultuous time for the company. I mean, we covered how crazy the buildup was to WrestleMania 13, and things have not really calmed down since.
No.
I mean, I love these Raws so much. It's so fascinating to watch week by week because they are totally just booking on the fly. They are trying different things. Some things are amazing and others are bombing horribly. There's no tonal consistency from segment to segment. You've got some very cutting edge Attitude Era stuff, and then you've got some stuff that's just kind of straight out of 1985.
it's actually such a fascinating opposite to the way that things are now. Because now everything, I mean, even though they're kind of falling apart and they're throwing stuff at the wall a little bit, for the most part, everything just feels very staid
Yeah.
and mellow and like,
Structured,
yes,
planned.
it just feels like very sanitized. Whereas at this point, they're so desperate. Like they're literally like, our company is going to go out of business if we don't find something. They're trying everything. Every week literally feels like a different product. Like they're like putting new characters on TV, abandoning them after 1 week, re-debuting that guy as somebody new 3 weeks later. Like it's madness because so much is going on and so much is changing from week to week that like this is the kind of product you want to tune in and watch. It's just like, what the fuck is going to happen?
Yeah. And when we talk, we always hear about like what dire financial straits the company is in, kind of in mid 97. It had never quite clicked with me until recently that this is when they would have gotten the WrestleMania buy rate and their WrestleMania checks would have come in and they realized that WrestleMania absolutely bombed and grossed like $3 million less than it was supposed to.
Right.
Like WrestleMania this year did like barely 200,000 buys. Like I'm sure they were expecting over 300.
Yeah.
Like that seemed impossible that a WrestleMania would do under 300,000 buys, and instead they barely broke 200.
It's just so stunning. Like WrestleMania wasn't even a thing here. So the fact that like you're still getting paid basically for your whole year based on how WrestleMania does, if it's in the shitter, like what's the point of even working here?
Yeah, I mean, and they've got guys on guaranteed contracts now.
Yeah.
Like Brett's got $1 million downside. Sean's got a $750,000 downside. Taker's probably in the, I don't know, 600 range, maybe 700. Austin's probably at 500. Like they're paying these guys whether the business is good or not.
And see, here's the reason why Vince held out on giving guys guaranteed contracts for so long. Because now that you're locked into this money, that's how companies actually do go out of business.
That's how Jim Crockett went down.
Yeah, it's because you now owe money that you can't bring in. So you're putting money out faster than you can get it, and there's no way to reverse that. And that's how you have to declare bankruptcy because you literally can't meet your debts. Like if Vince is just paying guys week to week on whatever he can get, he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, in some sense, you couldn't. I mean, obviously, wrestling territory is still folded all the time, but if you had a reasonable cash flow, you could stay in business because you were just going to pay guys whatever was coming in.
Yeah, and if like you couldn't afford those guys, oh well,
they're somewhere else. Yeah, they don't have contracts, but here, yeah, you are obligated to pay these guys this money.
This is why Vince McMahon has been so terrified of a union, and so is every other wrestling promoter for that matter. Because once you have to pay these guys, you can't just get rid of them and bring in cheaper scab alternatives. You literally have to find new things to do with these guys that you owe guaranteed money to. And that's what we're going towards, and it hasn't worked out well for WWE recently.
So we last left off at WrestleMania 13. Bret Hart beat Steve Austin in the classic submission match. Undertaker beat Psycho Sid in the main event to win the WWF Championship. The night after WrestleMania, Bret cemented his heel turn with a promo where he apologized to his fans in Canada, in Europe, in Japan, in the Middle East, and the rest of the world, except for America. And he told the American fans that he apologized for nothing and they could stick it up their ass.
This had, to my knowledge, never really been done. Like a lot of heels had been like, fuck you, America, especially like Russians and like the German characters of like the 50s and 60s. But like a huge baby face in America had never really been like, fuck this. I love everybody else in the whole world except America. Yeah. And then all of those people in those other countries embraced it this way. Like, it's not like people in Canada were like, yeah, Sergeant Slaughter, we hate America. Yay.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't think the writers intended this. No. I don't think the writers. I think Bret kind of went into business for himself to protect his brand in Canada. Like, he knows, okay, I'm going to turn heel. They talked him into turning heel, but he's like, I'm not going to be a heel in Canada. Like, I still need to be able to draw in Canada if I'm going to have value.
Well, this is also an underrated part too, but it's not just Canada. Bret Hart
Yeah.
is the biggest draw in Europe.
Europe,
Yeah,
Middle East,
when they go on
Africa, everywhere
European,
else they go, he's still the man,
he is the fucking man. He's arguably their biggest ever draw in Europe.
which is crazy.
Yeah,
Because
it's
Bret
just
Hart drew
absolutely,
everywhere except America.
and that's the thing. So like, not only is Bret Hart expressing this, but in order to protect his brand, but you get the sense that he really feels this way. Like, you American fans never gave a fuck about me. Go to hell.
Yeah. I I just this is so the best run of Bret's career.
It's
Like
not
this
even
is
close.
I mean obviously his matches were always great, but this is when he really I mean he always had kind of a dull milk toast character before this. Now he's got something that really clicks.
Like, that's awesome. And while we've said before that I don't really think that Bret Hart could have adapted to the changes in the company that went forward in the Attitude Era, because this is like literally as much attitude as he can possibly get, and I think that this would have run out of steam.
Now, I
This
mean
is
even by the fall it kind of runs out of steam.
yeah, but this, you can't have the Attitude Era without Bret and Shawn in '97. Like, it's built on the back of that. Like, Austin is Austin, and Austin's going to be the catalyst that drives it all. But literally, like, the heat that will explode into the Attitude Era comes from Hart and Bret. You got to give them credit.
So the week after that, Davey Boy Smith and Owen Hart were having a match to kind of settle their recent problems. Bret comes down and interrupts it. He says, you guys, you got to stop fighting. Brothers aren't supposed to fight. It's the fault of the American fans that you're fighting each other. This is what this country does to people. They have no moral values. He starts, talking about, reminds Davey, I introduce you to my wife, to your wife. Tells Owen, just think about all those Christmases we spent together, all those Thanksgivings, and like Owen really sells the hell out of this. He like starts tearing up.
It's a big deal. Like, I don't know that before this we'd ever seen Owen actually like emotional in a sympathetic way.
Yeah. And they've been, I mean, Bret and Owen have been at each other's throats for literally years at this point.
Oh yeah, Owen never forgave Bret for their feud, and like that was like 6 years old by now.
So they all kind of shake hands, leave the ring together, and that is the formation of the Hart Foundation. And they will grow in numbers in the subsequent weeks, as we'll see. But I'm such a big fan of the Hart Foundation as a stable. I loved this idea.
It's also just like working to your strengths, right? You can't find any free agents really that want to come to WWE at this point. So what do you do
have the
instead?
money to pay any free agents.
Yes. So instead of bringing in some like big free agent, you can just bring in like rehash guys.
Yeah.
Who, like Jim Neidhart isn't a fucking big time free agent, but if you put him in the Hart Foundation, he means something.
And like they've already signed Brian Pillman, but he shattered his ankle in that car accident and still can't really wrestle. But you put him in a group of guys, and all he really has to do is talk and like wrestle in some multi-man tag matches.
Yeah.
And he could basically be the manager of the group.
So basically, like, Davey Boy and Owen are the only ones who can actually work in the whole group at this point. But they're the only ones that have to. If you have a big enough stable, only like two dudes got to take bumps.
So the April in Your House was Revenge of the Taker. It was supposed to be headlined by Bret versus Sid, but Sid had a back injury, and also it was softball season. So they substituted in Steve Austin, and we got a WrestleMania 13 rematch. I don't think anyone complained about that.
Yeah, it's probably the worst of their three matches, but
Still good.
It still makes it pretty fucking good.
I mean, Bret's knee's fucked by this point.
Yeah. And like Steve is obviously in and out of like health issues during this entire period.
His knees are messed up too.
Which is why, like, when we get to the match later and they're just like Bret's just like murdering his knee, I'm like, ugh, stop that.
Yeah. So Austin won that match by disqualification when he had Bret in the sharpshooter, and the Hart Foundation interfered to break it up. With that victory, Austin became the #1 contender for the WWF Championship.
Austin's in a really weird place at this time in the company where he's like up with the main eventers, but it's still very odd to see him like challenging for titles and stuff. Like he doesn't feel like he's made at 13, but he doesn't feel like he's on that level yet. Like it'll take like the course of this year to really feel like he's a top guy, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't feel wrong when he's the Intercontinental Champion a couple months after this, or is a tag champion. That still feels kind of right. But
Yeah. They
also,
put the
he's
belt
in
on
main
him.
events because he needs to be. Undertaker on that same show retained the WWF Championship over Mankind. On the night after WrestleMania, Paul Bearer begged Undertaker to take him back as his manager, and then later threatened to reveal a dark secret from the Undertaker's past. This is the beginning of the Kane storyline. And after that Undertaker Mankind match, Undertaker burned Bear's face with a fireball, which was revenge for what Mankind had previously done to him. This is when Paul Bear transitions from being, dark-haired mortician Paul Bear with his squeaky voice to, kind of blonde, blonde, more like fire and brimstone Southern preacher Paul Bear.
Which is your preferred Paul Bearer? Because I think this is mine.
Yeah, I prefer this Paul Bear, but particularly for this era. It's just they're just going towards a more realistic product. Even if you've still got some over the top characters like Undertaker and Mankind, they are finding ways to make them seem real and fit into the real world.
And this is part of like the weird stuff that they're doing right now is that like they have to. We've already talked about how the Undertaker was kind of kept in a separate universe from the rest of the roster. Now, out of necessity, he's got to be with everybody else because they just don't have the top guys. So now they're trying to work in all of that like spooky Undertaker shit in a way that makes sense with the reality of the rest of it, and they're like blending it in really interesting ways. Like
I love it.
Yeah, like when they do the Kane thing, it doesn't feel ridiculous. Like when they start using their magical powers on each other.
Yeah,
it feels
that's ridiculous.
But like grounding like the Undertaker's like spooky, is he an undead zombie backstory? And no, he was just the son of a mortician who killed his whole family. Like while it's a crazy story, it at least grounds it in some semblance of reality.
Yeah, and I just love. We'll get into it with like the direction of Mankind's character, but I love the kind of blending of fantasy and reality, where they're like, let's take real things that have happened to these people, and like use them to explain their character, particularly with Foley.
Yeah,
they start acknowledging Cactus Jack and Dude Love, and that he actually does have a family. Like he doesn't actually live in a boiler room. He's just a very disturbed man.
It's really fascinating that they make Mick Foley be Mankind and not the other way around. Like they make Mankind the character be the actual person, Mick Foley, to such an extent that like I feel like Mick almost gets lost in it a little bit for the rest of his career. Like that stays with him. Like you can't really separate. I'm not sure how much the man Mick Foley is similar to Mankind. I think it's more than I'd be comfortable with.
There's some very dark things in those interviews, and we'll get to them in a minute.
Yes, and it comes from a very real place.
The night after Revenge of the Taker is one of my favorite episodes of Raw. This is the one that starts with Austin challenging Bret Hart to a street fight. At the top of the second hour, it actually happens, and Austin just destroys Bret. He gets a chair and demolishes Bret's knee, and then locks him in the sharpshooter and just refuses to let go until he is dragged off of him by like every referee in the company.
So good.
And then they wheel him backstage, put him in the ambulance, and who's driving the ambulance? Steve Austin.
So fucking. That's the only time, like, the surprise, the bad guys driving
this
the
was
thing.
The first time. This is the first time they've done this.
And just like, here's the thing. Steve Austin does so many things during his run that have become like tropes now.
Yeah.
That like don't have nearly the impact now because it's A, it's not him doing it, and B, it's not the first time. But like this is so stupid, like, hi, Stephanie, and all of that kind of thing. But like here, it's just like, this is an unhinged madman. Is he going to kill Bret Hart?
He just can't be stopped. He will not stop.
No. Like just beyond all measure. Like to like the dismay of Bret Hart, like he's pissed off like the one person on Earth, like the cockroach of the planet that you can't kill no matter what you do.
So this was all cover for the fact that Bret had a legitimate knee injury and needed surgery and needed some time off to rehab it. So this company's now down both Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Things are getting thin.
Yeah.
So the May in Your House was Cold Day in Hell, and Undertaker took on Austin for the title. Interestingly, Austin kind of turned heel for this match. Like, he did a super heel promo on the Undertaker and on the fans, like on the lead up to this. And I think he went a lot further than like they wanted him to, but he just felt like to make this match work, he needed to play the heel.
Well, here's the fascinating thing too, is that he never really stops playing heel. He never really starts like loving the fans or anything like that.
He never panders, which just makes the fans love him more.
Yeah, so he can like, even though he does that there, and even though on this show, like he's literally playing a heel and he loves it. Like he's having the best time being a heel. Like it doesn't change anything. Like this is still basically the same guy.
So at Cold Day in Hell, Undertaker retained the title over Austin after the Hart Foundation interfered. King of the Ring 1997 was really set up to be a very interesting show and ended up being one anyway, but it ended up being very different than it was originally supposed to be. It was supposed to be built around finally getting Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart and also Steve Austin versus Brian Pillman. Two matches like over a year in the making at that point. And then everything fell apart.
Yeah. Those things do not happen.
So the announced stipulation for Hart versus Michaels was that all 4 Hart Foundation members would be handcuffed to the ring posts, and that if Hart couldn't beat Michaels in 10 minutes, he would never wrestle in America again.
Yeah.
That actually kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's a really horrible gimmick. I wanted you to say it first because I wanted to make sure you weren't going to be like, yeah, that sounds like it'd be awesome. But no, that sounds fucking horrible.
Actually trash.
Yeah.
Couldn't they just lock him in a giant shark cage instead?
Oh, just like 8 dudes in a shark cage hanging above the ring.
But yeah, so obviously Bret was going to win there. Like, Bret's not going to not wrestle anymore. And interestingly, this time it's Bret and not Shawn who pulls out of the match. A couple things happen. One, there's a promo segment at the end of a Raw where like Bret is in his wheelchair and he's, tearing into Shawn, and Shawn is just kind of standing there taking it. And it's building to Bret standing up and then Shawn nailing him with the super kick, like right as the show ends. The problem is they blew the timing on it, and the kick happened after the show had already gone off the air.
So basically what the fans see is just Shawn sitting there taking abuse and doing nothing.
Yeah, and Bret is just like, you're a complete piece of shit. Just go tearing into him. And Shawn, finds out the kick didn't make it on the air and flips out backstage. Just, loses his shit, thinks Bret has sandbagged him. I don't think that's what happened there. I think they actually just screwed up the timing.
Yeah, but you can understand why he'd be upset.
Yeah, these guys hate each other.
Yes. And that's not to say that that's not something that Bret Hart would do, because, it is something he would do.
So the next week, Shawn gets revenge in the pretty much most bizarre way possible. As he's doing a promo on the Titantron, Bret's in the ring with the Hart Foundation. Shawn is completely fucked up here, just slurring his words and barely making any sense. And this is the Sunny Days promo where he says that, Bret, I don't think you can last 10 minutes in any situation, although you have been having a lot of sunny days lately.
Which isn't nearly as clever as I'm sure Shawn meant for it to be.
I find this whole thing, so the implication here is that Bret is fucking sunny, which Bret denies happened, but not really relevant. I just Bret treats this as it's the greatest affront ever, and that everybody was talking to my kids about it at school. How did anyone know what this meant?
Yeah. Really? Okay. So here's what it really is that really what he's making light of is that Bret Hart has been cheating on his wife
Yes.
for years.
So there was something in a previous promo between them where Shawn said something like, Bret claims he's a role model, but, I've seen him on the road and he ain't no role model. Like, that is a much more direct cut.
Yeah. And like Bret doesn't necessarily want this getting out, obviously.
No. I mean, he's married. Him and his wife have had lots of problems over the years, but they are still together at this point.
My favorite thing about the Sunny Days comment is that Bret's not the one fucking Sunny. Shawn is.
Is that still going on at this point? I thought that was over by now.
I think it is, but like that's just so funny to me.
Yeah.
It's just like you're one to talk, bro.
So I don't know if because of that or a mix of probably that and the injury, Bret says, I can't do this match. Like, I doubt he was ready. We can see a month later here at Canadian Stampede, he's still kind of limping and struggling to get through this tag match.
Yeah.
He's not ready to have the kind of match him and Shawn are supposed to have.
Right. And like, I can understand why Bret wouldn't want to try. Like, Bret and Shawn make magic when they're in the ring together. Like, something about them just works even when they hate each other. Like that Survivor Series match right up until the point where it turns into the greatest clusterfuck of all time is magic. It's amazing.
I love it.
They just have it. The problem is that Shawn will attempt to eat Bret alive in the ring if he comes in injured.
Yeah.
So Bret is smart not to go through.
He's going to get shown up, blown up, and if things get out of control, which they could, like, it's not that crazy that a match between these guys might turn into a real fight. Bret doesn't want to go in with a bad knee in that situation.
Right. Not that, like, to be honest, I still feel like Bret with a bad knee can whoop Shawn Michaels' ass.
Yeah, well, we found that out the night after King of the Ring, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did.
We'll get there in a second. Pillman also couldn't do his match against Austin. His ankle's so fucked up. Like, he can't walk. He can barely walk. He can't bend his ankle. It's just so sad because he's found such a great character in this loose cannon.
And he's in such amazing shape.
Yeah, he's jacked. He looks so good, and he's got the personality, but he can't work anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame.
I mean, you just imagine, like, 1989, 1991 Brian Pillman physically with this Brian Pillman's character and ring psychology. You've got one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I mean, especially at a time where Austin is coming in. Like, you put that guy on top during the Attitude Era, it's, oh my God.
So they got to just shotgun things here. They have Austin and Michaels win the tag titles from Bulldog and Owen on Raw, which is an awesome match.
Yes.
And then, like, they hate each other and get into a feud with each other, and they're constantly fighting, which makes all the sense in the world that these guys wouldn't like each other.
Oh, God, no. They're literally opposite people.
Yeah, giant egos. Austin's like, I don't need Shawn Michaels out here shaking his ass like a boy toy. Just makes all the sense in the world that Steve Austin wouldn't like Shawn Michaels.
It is super funny when they're like, when he's Commissioner Michaels and he and Austin get like super chummy.
Yeah. They both like to drink. There's that.
We're both drinking Texas boys. Let's be friends. Just let's forget the fact that we've hated each other for years.
Yeah. So they end up booking Austin and Michaels to face each other at King of the Ring. Which we'll get into in a second, but that's an awesome match. Just a total forgotten classic.
Yeah, it's really good.
Way better than their WrestleMania match because they're both relatively healthy.
Yep.
Other stuff going on the way to King of the Ring. Mankind has turned face and he's starting to get over. They do that great series of sit-down interviews we talked about with JR, kind of like broken up into like 3 parts across multiple Raws, where they just kind of cover everything, like growing up, hitchhiking to Madison Square Garden, the backyard wrestling, the dude love, the elbow drops off the house, seeing Jimmy Snuka. They show the death matches from Japan, like get into that. Cactus Jack, something they this is kind of their first time doing it, just like peeling back the curtain, just like revealing, oh, this is who this guy actually is. He's not just this character, Mankind. He's this man, Mick Foley, who's played this other character, Cactus Jack, in other promotions.
And the part of it that's always resonated to me is that the premise of the whole thing, from like start to finish, the through line is Jim Ross has been the entire time Mankind's been in the company being like, this man loves pain. This man can't feel anything. And like basically it's all an attempt by Mankind to say, I do feel pain. I'm so horribly fucked up that this is the only way I can live my dream. Please stop telling people that I don't feel this.
Yeah.
That I'm a monster.
It's some just great stuff. And that's kind of the classic story is they're in this studio with these bright lights and they can't see like who's watching. And during a break, they just hear Vince McMahon go, this is outstanding.
And it is.
Yeah, it's some of the most captivating stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's still to this day. If you go back and watch this, this is some of the best acting that's ever taken place in wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, Mankind is embodying this so heavily. Like all of the self-pity and self-doubt that Mick Foley had experienced in his actual career, he's just like amplifying to such an incredible extent. Like the old phrase is like the best characters are just yourself turned up to 11. But like this one, it's just like the self-pity and the self-hatred is turned up to 11.
All the saddest and like darkest parts of his personality on display.
This is the real Mick Foley, his real experiences and his real feelings about himself and his career.
Yeah. I mean, the line that gives me chills is, why didn't you sign me back when I was good?
Yes.
Like now I'm this broken down shell of a man. He's like, you think I like it that I can't play with my kids? You think I like it that I need a 9-inch needle put into my back just so I can wrestle one more match? Whew.
Yeah, that's dark.
Yeah. And then he attacks JR and puts him in the mandible claw, and he starts making those just horrifying, like, squealing noises.
And, like, we've never really seen a character like this ever in wrestling history, that we understand this fully. And it winds up turning him babyface over time.
That's the amazing thing. This is how he becomes a babyface.
Yeah, it just, like, once fans get inside and understand him, they love him. Like, having this much character development is what turns him into one of the top stars in the company as a babyface.
Yeah. We've talked before, but this format of the sit-down interview is just so good and so something they should lean on more. Like,
here's the thing. Sometimes it fails. Like, when Lashley came back, they tried this with him. And, like, it's not going to work if
there's nothing there.
Yeah, Bobby Lashley's never experienced, like, real issues with sports in his life, aside from the Michael Hayes thing, which they refused to mention.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah,
but it would have been great if they had.
That would have been the thing to talk about. Last time I was here, you guys held me back. You held me down. You forced me out because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
That
would have been electric. That's the thing. What it requires, though, is a level of honesty that I don't feel like they're capable of.
Not anymore, no.
Self-reflection. Here they're doing it just because they're desperate. Like,
they're literally just saying, like, Mick, talk about whatever you want. Go for it. Your story's interesting. And then it's Mick is who brings all of this to the table.
Yeah, and credit to Vince Russo.
Yeah, Vince Russo's who got it out of him.
This is a Vince Russo special right here.
Mick did not want to bring up Dude Love. Like, just like that really sad thought that, like, he's sitting in the locker room with Shawn Michaels as they watch the Dude Love video, and he tells Shawn, like, I wanted to be you growing up.
Why does Shawn Michaels look like he does, and why do I look like I do?
That's the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say enough about this. This is, for all everybody talks about the ECW promos, which are amazing. Yeah. These sets of interviews are Mick Foley's magnum opus. This is the best thing he ever did in his career.
They also did a series of these with Goldust that weren't as good, but were also very just raw and real. This is where he kind of reveals that, like, him and Dusty haven't spoken in years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I still love you, Dad, and I hope you're proud of me, but I wish you would call me.
Like that would have been a great opportunity to transition him to the natural Dustin Rhodes.
Out of Gold Dust.
Yeah, but
instead he continues to be Gold Dust.
Yeah, but like again, the segment that we have lauded literally the most in the history of this podcast is the sit-down interview between Austin and The Rock. Yeah. And like that's another example that just shows like the potential of this format. Just two people being real. And like fans feel that.
Yeah. And Jim Ross is a huge player in this, but like Michael Cole was great in this role too when they would do those interviews for the website.
Well, this was his actual job. He's a journalist.
Yeah, I think like Joey Styles could be great in this role. I think this would be a great use of the Steve Austin podcast.
Yeah,
that's the modern equivalent was when they let Austin do those podcasts. The first couple that were live, and he was allowed to just do whatever he wanted, and actually asked real questions. And we got some real stuff out of Vince and Triple H. It destroyed Dean Ambrose's push.
It sure did.
Yeah. Oof, boy.
But now they're all like
they're canned. Yeah.
It ruined Austin's whole podcast. It's because like he didn't have his heart in it anymore. He's like, I'm not doing this. This is not for me.
He felt so bad that he ruined Dean Ambrose's push.
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, Ambrose ruined Ambrose's push.
Yeah, he buried himself. Oh. So King of the Ring 97. The Undertaker retains the WWF title over Farouk. Austin and Michaels fight to a double disqualification. And Hunter Hearst Helmsley beats Mankind to win the King of the Ring tournament. Pretty decent pay-per-view. Nothing special, but some very interesting stuff.
It's okay. Like, it's one of those shows where it's like, all right, there's potential for something here, but this isn't the right show. You can skip it if you're doing a rewatch of pay-per-views from this era.
The night after King of the Ring in Hartford is an infamous one, but not for anything that happened on screen. About an hour before Raw was supposed to go on the air, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels got into a real fight backstage. I think we've all heard many descriptions of how this went down. There's a lot of common elements. They run into each other backstage. Bret seems like he was the instigator here.
Oh, yeah. Like, Bret says that he was just like, hey, how's it going? And Shawn was just like, don't talk to me. But, like, the common element in pretty much every other account is that Bret was, like, being kind of shitty to Shawn. And Shawn just wasn't taking it.
Yeah. I mean, Bret's pissed off. Understandably, you don't mess with a guy's marriage and his family.
Right.
You're gonna provoke him. They get into it. They fight. They're throwing punches. They're rolling around. It gets broken up, but Shawn gets a big chunk of his hair ripped out.
Shawn promptly goes to Vince and tells him this is an unsafe work environment. Fuck this. I'm out.
And he's literally like, I'm driving to Boston, where Nitro is that night.
Which is, I mean, not the first or last time that he threatens to do that.
Yeah. He can't do it. He's under contract. WCW never would have put him on TV.
But the funny thing is, he possibly could have sued to get out of contract for this. Like that wasn't really a thing that anyone considered in those days.
The contracts aren't real is the thing. Like this has been proven. If you have the resources to fight them in court,
right,
you can win. Like the Warrior did it, Brock did it, Punk did it. It can be done.
Yeah, you're an independent contract. You have the right to leave.
Yeah. Bret, tweaked his knee during this, but as we said, Michaels storms into McMahon's office, says it's an unsafe working environment, and then he leaves the building. And he's gone until towards the end of July. So he's not on this pay-per-view. He's not on any of the Raws leading up to this. Bret also ends up leaving that night, and he's also not on Raw. This all happens at 8:00 at night when Raw's coming on at 9. So they're having to rewrite this show on about an hour's notice.
Yeah, imagine you're Vince Russo and Vince comes into your office and just like, oh hey, by the way, Vince, you got to rewrite the whole show because the whole main event walked out.
Yeah, so the main event, they were promoting Austin versus Pillman, but they knew that was not going to happen. Michaels, Austin was going to get jumped before the match, which is what happens. Michaels was going to substitute for Austin against Pillman. Instead, it ends up being Mankind who does it, which is the kickoff to the delightful Mankind wants to be Austin's tag team partner storyline.
One of my favorite storylines from this whole period.
Yeah. They actually acknowledged the fight between Brett and Sean on the air that night.
Which is weird.
It's just, they're just, you know what? Anything for ratings. This is the shit people want to hear. Yeah, Vince is just like, some very unprofessional behavior from Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. There was a fight backstage before the show went on the air. Blah, blah, blah. Not what you expect, but they're desperate at this point.
Yeah, they need anything that'll keep people tuned in. Yeah, let's just acknowledge it. Go for it.
If anything, I'm surprised like the next week they didn't do like a sit-down interview with Bret where he talked about it.
Yeah.
That would have been something they could have promoted.
Yeah.
They announced on Raw that night that the Hart Foundation would face off against a team led by Steve Austin in a 5-on-5 tag match. Michaels was supposed to be in the match. He was replaced by Ken Shamrock. Pretty sure Sid was supposed to be in there too, but he was in a car accident along with, I think it was Doug Furnace and Phil LaFon who were in the car with him, and he was hurt and couldn't do the match either. So I think they subbed in Goldust for him. So it went from Austin, Michaels, Sid, and the Legion of Doom to Austin, Shamrock, Goldust, and the Legion of Doom, which is still a pretty awesome team, but Austin, Michaels, Sid, and LOD is pretty damn amazing.
Yeah, let's be clear. Like, the heat that the team gets on this show is unbelievable. But if Sean had been out there,
oh boy,
if Sid had been out there, it would have been out of control. Like, Sean would have been out there humping the Canadian flag and, like, mooning people. He would have been punching Stu Hart in the face.
Yeah. There's so much interesting stuff on these Raws. I watched them all as part of the research for this show. Also on this Raw, Rob Van Dam wrestles Flash Funk, and Tommy Dreamer and Paul Heyman get into it with Van Dam and Jerry Lawler. This is like right after the ECW pay-per-view where Lawler showed up at the end. And they are co-promoting with ECW. I feel like we've talked about this at some point.
I think we did somewhere. We're like
probably in the either the Barely Legal show or the maybe the show on ECW One Night Stand. We just talked about like the history of their relationship, but yeah, like they're co-promoting with ECW here.
And it's one of the best moments in ECW history when like the lights go out and they come back on and Jerry Lawler's in the middle of the
and then Cornette too.
Yes.
The Cornette one's such a classic.
And they just shit on everybody.
Well, yeah, Dreamer got his testicle broken.
That's how real it is. Is that like, oh, we got to lay it in and make it feel real. Let's murder his testicles.
Jesus Christ. A few weeks later, Sabu gets a match on Raw against Flash Funk. I did not remember that happened.
Is that the one where he jumps off the R?
No, because not using that set anymore.
Oh, that's right. That's from before. Yeah.
Yeah, but he, again, does the triple jump moonsault. And then this just kind of stops because I assume Heyman did something to piss everybody off.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
Yeah. Lawler and Dreamer had a match at Hardcore Heaven in August. There was talk of Lawler and Van Dam against Dreamer and Sandman at SummerSlam, but it doesn't happen, and they end up just kind of quietly dropping the ECW aspect of this relationship. They continue to kind of send talent to ECW. They send Al Snow, Furnace and LaFon, lots of guys they send over to ECW just to give them somewhere to work and get some paydays. And they continue to, pay Heyman and kind of try to keep ECW afloat financially.
I'm not surprised they stopped doing it because at a certain point, like once this talent starts to get over on your TV, now there's characters your fans want to see that you have no control over. And that's not awesome.
Just sign Van Dam and Sabu.
Well, that's the thing, is that you don't need anybody else.
Yeah, like, what the fuck else do you want from ECW at that point?
Taz, if he were 6 inches taller.
Yeah, Taz, if he weren't a munchkin.
Especially like, I feel like if Taz had come in at this point, though, they would have made a star out of him because they would have needed to.
If they could have done it, God, Taz and Shamrock could have been awesome.
Yeah, they just couldn't do it when he did come in because they had so many other options.
And he was a shell of himself by that point.
Yeah, but like, yeah, at this point, if you had done Sabu versus Taz on Raw, it would have driven people insane.
Just something else to point out, kind of a road not taken. They could have signed Chris Benoit back in 1995, and he would have been in the Hart Foundation here.
Oh, man, you're right.
Chris Benoit versus Steve Austin, Chris Benoit versus Ken Shamrock, Chris Benoit versus Shawn Michaels versus Mick Foley. Like, come on.
I mean, they probably would have just put him in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But at least it would have had somebody in it.
The next week's Raw was built around a main event where Farouk. So the night after King of the Ring, Farouk kind of kicked out the Deadwood from the nation. He kicked out Crush and Savio. PG-13 just kind of disappeared because they had gotten beaten up. They were never heard from again.
Drugs. Oh, did I say that?
Yeah. That may have played a role. God, I really liked the Nation rapping entrance, though.
Well, again, as I've mentioned before, if they had had some black people doing it, maybe.
It wasn't about race, though.
Yeah, I know. But like, that's the thing, is that like, they get rid of PG-13 and they get rid of the whole rapping entrance. It's like, well, there are other rappers. Like, you could just find some more. Yeah,
so Farouk promised a bigger, badder, and blacker version of the Nation.
Yep.
So it's Farouk and his mystery partner against Undertaker and Ahmed Johnson. The new member ends up being Kama Mustafa, making his return to the company. So it's a very weird match where like Ahmed doesn't tag in, and Undertaker just gets pinned clean by Kama after a Uranagi.
Super weird.
Like, you would have thought they would have just had like Ahmed turn on him and attack him, and then they could pin him. But no, Kama just beats Taker clean. World champion and the Undertaker. Clean job to the Godfather in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, well, that's the only guy that Taker would do that for, is his best friend.
Yeah. So then Ahmed turns heel and joins the Nation, which he's been fighting against the Nation for months at this point. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it gets an insane amount of heat.
Let me talk about this for a minute, because there are two great betrayals in my life that I've never truly recovered from. There are people out there who have stories about when Hulk Hogan turned and it broke their heart as like a little 8-year-old or whatever. I just need you to understand that like my two favorite wrestlers growing up, the first favorite wrestler I ever had was Tatanka. And then when he betrayed Lex Luger and joined the $1 Million Corporation, I cried for weeks. I would talk to people I met at school about it who have no idea what I was talking about. God. Then when this happened, this is literally the last thing I ever saw before I no longer was allowed to watch wrestling.
Oh no, this is when you Pearl River plunged the pillow through the wall?
This is the one, buddy.
No!
I watched this episode of Raw. I watched him turn heel, and I was so upset that my favorite wrestler, Ahmed Johnson, had turned that I fucking powerbombed a pillow through a window in my house and was banned from wrestling. This is a true thing that happened to me. Okay, this is a formative experience in my life.
Oh, this is your origin story. Like, if you hadn't been banned from watching wrestling, you probably would have just lost interest eventually.
Oh, yeah. I would have gotten to, like, 2001 and been
like this is good. Fucking lame.
I missed this whole era and came back to it in 2001. Like, what did I miss? Holy shit.
Why couldn't I have seen it when it was good?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, Ahmed gets like a scary amount of heat here.
Yeah, because like, here's the thing, is that WWE has a lot of racist fans. Like, that's no way around putting it that way. And the whole legend of it, one of the good ones, is a big part of having a top black star. It's like Junkyard Dog in the South was always that, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the good ones.
Yeah.
And that's what Ahmed Johnson had going for him here. So when he turns and joins the Black Power stable, then the white fans hate him so much more, to like you said, a scary degree.
Like, apparently there was some thought that they might turn the nation face. That was not going to happen.
No.
It's also probably fortunate that he got hurt, because I feel like this might have gotten out of control.
Well, like, especially since, like, the nation, like, some of the heat of the nation was, like, off because they were basically fighting Nazis who nobody liked for a while. And then they were fighting another black guy. But there's only one way to go after Ahmed joins them. And then they got to start feuding with white guys.
Got to be a race war.
Yeah. And then
what we end up with.
A whole other thing. Yeah.
So this is when DOA debuts, because Crush comes back and he brings out the Harris brothers and Brian Lee riding bikes, and they get an insane pop when they show up.
Yeah.
They are massively over.
Let's let that ruminate for a minute, because two of the people you just mentioned are actual Nazis.
Yeah.
And they're not hiding it here.
No, they just got like their Nazi tattoos fully on display. I mean, look, biker gangs aren't automatically like neo-Nazis, but it's pretty common.
Yes. And like basically in the context of this feud, they are absolutely white supremacists. They are literally just fighting with Puerto Ricans and black people.
Yeah. And then the next week, Savio Vega brings out Los Boricuas, Miguel Perez, Jose Estrada, and Jesus Castillo. Who suck. Like, it's just shitty stable.
And let me just say this. While this is absolutely reprehensible to take advantage of this and try to draw money from hatred of other races, and
they didn't.
Yes, that's the thing. Is that what an indictment it is of Crush and the Harris brothers that they couldn't get over as the white guys in a race war in the 90s in professional wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what the I'm glad they didn't, because fuck them. I hope they rot in hell. But like, it's amazing that they couldn't. It's just ridiculous.
So Ahmed is supposed to face Undertaker for the title on this show, but he blows out his knee in the brawl between DOA and the Nation, when like he just kind of, somebody falls into the back of his knee and it tears. So he's out.
Because that match would have been the shits.
Oh god, that match would have been awful. Instead, they substitute in Vader, which is, again, not something I think anyone had a complaint about.
No. And I mean, like, Vader is already not over. Like, he
got a little heat when he beat up the reporter in Kuwait.
Yeah. But, like, he's pretty much done.
Yeah. Also, Shamrock kicked his ass in that match at Cold Day in Hell.
Oh, just fucking buried him 6 feet
that's
under.
That's a great match. If you ever want to look up something that's just, like, doesn't feel right, that's, like, a worked shoot fight.
Well, like, I think Shamrock did an interview where he was just like, Vader said, hit me with some live rounds, so I did. And then he was like, got mad, and he started stiffing me. So I was like, fuck you. And I stiffed him right back.
I think Vader ended up in the hospital. His legs were so fucked up from those kicks.
He did it to himself, man. You don't fucking play stiff with the MMA guy.
Shamrock's a real, again, like, these guys have just got to realize the difference between pretend fighting and real fighting.
Like, that's the fascinating thing, too. It's like, I understand why, like, Shamrock didn't want to go into the brawl for all and dumb shit like that because it would have ruined his career if he had lost. But, like, he probably wouldn't have lost. It's just the freak.
Probably not, but yeah, fighting in gloves and, like, the rules are all wonky. But, yeah, I think he would have just taken all these guys.
But all these guys that they say are, like, shooters and, like, bad men, you need to understand that they're bad men. Like, there are people who have had a reputation in wrestling history as being, like, badasses. And, like, those are badasses among badasses. Like, they would always talk about, like, people would, like, in the hallway try to shoot on Kurt Angle by surprise.
Yeah.
Just to see if they could get him down.
Of course they can't.
No one ever did.
No. Again, he's a champion amateur wrestler. Like,
yeah. Kurt Angle with 2 cups of coffees in his hand could not possibly be taken down.
Vader's Vader, is Vader a big, scary, intimidating guy? Sure, but like his reputation for being a tough guy is the fact that he beat up guys who were not trying to fight him.
Yeah,
like
that were
he shot on guys in like worked matches. It's like Inoki.
It's just like scummy.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Took advantage of jobbers. Whereas Shamrock fought other trained athletes in real fights.
and like Shamrock made his name in MMA during the time it was the Wild fucking West.
Yeah.
Where just like random karate guys and big beer brawlers and all of this shit that he had
took
to
them
fight.
all.
Yeah.
So at this point, Undertaker had agreed to let Bear manage him again under the threat of Bear revealing Undertaker's terrible secret. Then he got fed up with that, and he beat up Vader on Raw 2 weeks before Canadian Stampede, which led Bear to reveal the secret the next week on Raw.
You're a murderer!
Murderer! Bear came out the next week to reveal the secret. He explained that he had worked for the Undertaker's father at their family funeral home. He said the Undertaker had a brother named Kane. The Undertaker and Kane would play with fire, and Undertaker set a fire that killed the rest of his family. Woo!
There is a graphic novel about this that I had the fortune/misfortune of reading.
Into Darkness?
Yes, and it's well, it's real shit, and I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah, gotta remember, Kane was actually in Spain while all this was going on, right?
Yeah.
Fuck. Being trained by the Spaniard. Yeah, the Spaniard from Spain.
From Spain. That's where Spaniards come from, Steve.
Jesus Christ. This is after he's killed Katie Vick.
Assumedly, yeah. Just the idea...
After his Playboy phase.
Here's the fantastic thing about the Kane character, is that the timeline makes absolutely no sense. Because in there somewhere, in the midst of his parents being murdered and him being abandoned, and him having to go through life as like a secret child who was hidden in the attic, he went to high school like a normal person and had a girlfriend.
Curious.
Yeah, funny how that works.
So Undertaker does like a response to this. And I think this is one of the most important moments of Undertaker's career, because this is like the first time he's had to do a really real promo. And this is like an 8-minute monologue he does here.
Yeah.
And he crushes it.
In the past, when he's done monologues, it's just been like, just say a bunch of supernatural gibberish for a while. Nothing he said meant a damn thing. But he fucking destroys it here.
Yeah, like he tells his side of the story that, yes, they played with matches, but then they got caught and like they got punished, and Taker's dad like sent him off to go do some more chores, and Kane was playing with fire and Kane set the fire, and like, he talks about how, this was the worst, how much he regrets this. This was the worst day of his life, and like Paul Bear took him and made him go look at the charred remains of his family the night before the funeral, so he couldn't go to the funeral. It's heavy stuff. And
it really is.
His acting here is great. It's so much more depth than you would have expected from him here.
It's just the most vulnerability that character has ever been allowed to show.
Yeah.
And like we said, like it brings it to a more real place than I ever really expected to see him. And it makes him more accessible as a character.
So also on this show, Hunter Hearst Helmsley will face Mankind in a rematch of King of the Ring. Couple things going on with Helmsley. One, he refuses to wear the King's crown and instead smashes it every time he has a segment, which I think is a great gimmick and they should have kept doing.
Yes, and he was a genius to do that because this crown looked like shit.
Yeah. Yeah, they want him to do the cheesy King gimmick, which is just an anchor around your neck, and he's smart enough to realize that's stupid, so he legitimately just like smashes the crown against orders every single time until they give it up.
I just love that Vince stays stubborn about this for weeks.
Yeah.
He's just like, well, pal, I see that you broke it. Here's another one.
Yeah.
How much money did they spend on these shit-ass crowns?
Those things can't have cost anything. They're made of plastic.
Yeah. It's just, they're so terrible. And like, thank God that Triple H is smart enough to realize what an albatross this would be for him.
Yeah. Mankind is also campaigning to replace Shawn Michaels as Steve Austin's tag team partner, which will culminate in Dude Love's awesome WWF debut a few weeks after this pay-per-view.
God, just like when the shoes start strutting down
Yeah.
on the Titantron, and Steve's like, well, "Who the fuck is that?"
It's just such a perfect angle.
Yes.
The night after King of the Ring, Helmsley did a shootish promo where he said that he would have won the King of the Ring the year before if not for Vince McMahon and his politics. Also in that promo, Chyna speaks for the first time as she tells Mankind to kiss her ass. And Mankind responds that he's a good kisser.
It's a pretty good line, actually.
I always loved the like sneaky chemistry between Foley and Chyna.
Oh yeah.
Like
I always thought that was going to go somewhere more.
that would have been kind of a great pairing in like 1999.
Just these two very strange people.
Yeah.
They could have been like tag team champions together.
Why not?
Yeah.
Other oddities from Raws around this time. Dan Severn shows up to do commentary on a Ken Shamrock match in Detroit.
Which is, they were so thirsty for that match.
Yeah, and then they just didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think either guy was willing to do it because
Yeah.
it would have ruined their career to take the fall.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I couldn't tell who got, either Shamrock got a monster pop or Severn did, because like right as Shamrock walked out, they put Severn's face up on the screen, and like Dan Severn's from Michigan, and like his big fight against Shamrock was in Detroit, so like probably Detroit knows who he is. So I don't know who was over there.
That's a good question. I'm not, maybe both of them. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I did not realize that they were already kind of negotiating with Severn and like teasing that this early. I don't remember. Severn doesn't really come in until after WrestleMania 14.
Yeah.
And like they don't have to train him. He knows he's been a pro wrestler already at this point, hasn't he?
Oh, Severn? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's the NWA champion, isn't he?
I think he has been.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
Hitman Hearns and Bret Hart get into it on that same Raw in Detroit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Hearns gets to knock out Neidhart. Like it's a very low rent version of Tyson and Austin.
Yes. Incredibly low rent.
And Jim Cornette bringing out the Samoan squat team on Raw in one of the most hilarious disasters I've ever seen.
What were they thinking with that?
So they got these two fat dudes, and they're like 5'5", and so they're like as wide as they are tall.
Yes.
So like Cornette comes out, and he's like, this is Cornette's first appearance in months since Bulldog and Owen dropped him as their manager, and he's like, hey, I've got a real tag team for you. And he brings these fat asses out. And he's like, Cornette's like kind of power walking down to the ring. And he's like turning around. He's like, where the hell are these guys? And like, they're barely like halfway down the ramp. So he has to like slow down to let them catch up with him.
Oh my God. It's a disaster.
And then they go to roll into the ring and they can't get up. And then they start fighting with Owen and Bulldog. And Bulldog just grabs one of them and slams him.
Which basically just kills their entire careers right there.
Yes! Bulldog's like, well, fuck it. I'm going to slam him.
Which, props for Bulldog.
Yeah.
Just as strong as they portrayed him to be.
Jesus. And then, like, they beat up the headbangers, and they do, like, one does a diving headbutt, the other does a fucking moonsault.
Yeah.
And they're never heard from again. This is it. Apparently, Cornette was just, like, apoplectic backstage. Just, like, disgraced, and, like, I can never show my face on TV again. Which, the next time we see him, he's managing the NWA, so it doesn't get better from here.
It's worse.
God. Like we said, it's a really weird time.
And just like, but the funny thing is, it's like, if they did that shit now, it's something we would make fun of the company of for months, years.
Yeah. Whereas here, it just got forgotten overnight.
Oh, yeah. Like the next week, it's just like, oh, hey, what happened to those Simone guys? Oh, who gives a shit?
All right. So I think we're finally ready to get into the show. It's July 6th, 1997, at the Canadian Airlines Saddle Dome in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. 12,151 fans in attendance, a sold out crowd. 10,974 paid for a $229,000 gate and $65,000 in merchandise. Not sure if that's in Canadian or American dollars, which is a big difference at this time.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually.
Because those numbers are great if they're in American dollars.
Yeah, I can't imagine they are, though.
It's the largest gate ever in Calgary for any company, the third largest paid crowd behind a 1991 WWF house show that drew 11,000 and 1987 WWF house show that drew 12,000 paid for Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy.
Sure.
The show does 209,000 buys, which is way up from the 122,000 the previous year's July In Your House did. That one was headlined by Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Sid versus Owen, British Bulldog, and Vader, if you can believe that didn't draw.
That's a garbage card. But also,
Yes.
like, this draws almost as much as WrestleMania this year,
Yep, it's in the same ballpark.
which is nuts.
Yeah. On commentary, the venerable team of Vince McMahon, Jim Ross, and Jerry Lawler,
Thank God Vince McMahon is almost done doing commentary. Jesus Christ.
all decked out in ridiculous cowboy gear.
My pop of the night was literally when the camera pans to them, and I'm like, who are these people? Oh my God, that's Vince in a cowboy hat.
Vince in a cowboy hat with like a vest, and Lawler's got a giant cowboy hat on.
I thought he was Dusty Rhodes because he's
God,
wearing
I
like one of
wish.
those Dusty style hats.
The opening package is about how heroes and villains no longer really exist, and we're left with shades of gray, which I feel like is every opening package from this year.
Yeah, it's just Vince trying to convince his old school fan because Vince doesn't understand what he's promoting at this point.
No one else can either.
Yeah, everyone's trying to convince Vince that this is a good idea, but he doesn't really get it. So he's just like, we better tell him that it's shades of gray or they'll be confused.
The stage is the classic In Your House stage. If I could have changed one thing about this show, God, I wish they had had like the WCW Spring Stampede set with the barn and the bales of hay and the wagons and all that. That would have been so perfect for this show. It would have been so great for like the hardcore segments.
Oh yeah, because that's basically what the stoop, like the Hart family house, looked like. It was a big ass barn.
Yeah.
Like they should have just modeled the set after the dungeon.
Yep. Announcers welcome us to the show. Vince, like his second line, what about this extraordinary Japanese match, JR?
Said with all the conviction of someone who someone else convinced him to put it on the show, and he doesn't know who these people are.
How many times did JR have to sell the great Sasuke to Vince?
Listen, look, I'm sure that Vince McMahon at least read the run sheet to know that Sasuke was going to be on this show, but he's obviously never said the name out loud before he starts talking about it, because this is the great Sasuke.
Just fucking wretched.
Just like I cringed deep inside my soul.
Opening match, Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Mankind in a rematch of the King of the Ring final. What'd you make of Helmsley's kind of character and look here?
Terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just trash ass garbage.
Yeah. So he's got the robe. He's still got like the kind of like slacks for the pants that he's wearing. He's got Ode to Joy as his entrance theme, which I do kind of like that.
Yeah, that's good. Like he's starting to collect the parts, as we covered before. Like Ode to Joy is good. China is dynamite as his bodyguard.
Great here.
It's just like half robe, half coat with like the tights. It's just he looks like a jabroni. It's like he looks like a highly paid jobber.
Yeah.
This shit would have been like straight out of like NWA 80s. It just doesn't work. especially with like the rest of the stuff going on in this card. He just feels like a retread.
And then we have a package that recaps the feud, narrated by Doc Hendricks, doing his best, like, wacky morning DJ voice. Hey, guys, it's Doc Hendricks.
Well, Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he hurt Mankind, and Mankind wants his revenge.
Jesus Christ,
It's
Doc
the shits.
Hendricks. God, Michael Hayes is so bad at this.
This has become a shit on Michael Hayes podcast, and I'm very comfortable with that.
And he could have been great at it if they'd let him be Michael Hayes.
That's the thing, yeah. But he's got to be Doc Hendricks.
Hey, I'm wacky.
Wacky Doc.
Mankind gets a bit of a pop. He's starting to get over. Still got, the dark entrance theme and the lights going out and all that. But he throws in a bang bang as he's walking down the aisle. Yeah. It's a hybrid character at this point. They're starting to show some elements of Cactus Jack in there.
Right.
As we've established, these two have just fantastic chemistry. We covered that great street fight they had at Madison Square Garden on that Raw in '97. They had a great match in the UK at one night only. The street fight from the Royal Rumble 2000 is legendary. This is another really awesome match between these two.
Yeah, this is during a time when they really didn't have a lot going on. So, like, if anything was working in the undercard, they just ride it as hard as they could.
Yeah, so these guys are wrestling at every pay-per-view for months after this.
Yeah, and nobody's complaining because they're tearing the house down.
Yeah. Mankind starts fast with a bulldog and a body slam, then a double arm DDT. It quickly becomes apparent that the crowd is just on fire for everything. Everything gets a pop.
This is one of the hottest crowds I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah. Helmsley charges. He gets backdropped to the floor, and then Mankind drops the Cactus Jack elbow off the apron. Kind of one of the few times I remember him doing that in the WWF.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of guys would take it.
Oh, it looks like a stiff bump.
But like Triple H, God bless Triple H, because these matches kind of helped to make his career. And in fact, like Mick Foley basically makes Triple H numerous times.
In 2000, that's when he gets over. But this is like the first time you start to see, he's kind of a tough guy. Like he's taking an ass kicking here.
Like it's the same thing that winds up making Randy Orton too. It's just that moment where like, oh, this fancy boy is actually kind of a badass. Like that happens multiple times for Triple H, and it's very much thanks to Mick Foley. But he's also one of the few guys who really works Mick Foley style matches with him. Like a lot of Mick Foley's wrestling with other guys is during this era is he's got to try to adapt to their style, and it's hit or miss. Well, like Triple H is always up for like, yeah, dude, wild deathmatch brawl, let's go.
Helmsley takes the flare bump out onto the floor. He tries to bail out, but Foley chases him down up the ramp and then suplexes him on the metal ramp, which is a tough bump.
It sure is.
They go back to the ring. Helmsley goes for a sunset flip into the ring. Mankind catches him and gets him in the mandible claw, but Chyna breaks that up with a forearm to the head. They go to the floor, and then something insane happens as Helmsley whips Mankind over to Chyna, and she like half hip tosses, half power slams Foley into the steps.
Yeah, that was kind of nuts.
His leg just slams right into the steps.
Ugh.
Horrible.
It's one of those spots that he liked taking, and it just looks like the most miserably painful thing you could possibly do.
The way he would hit the steps, where he would hit them with his legs and flip over them, just makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, it looks super impressive.
Oh.
But like it's
like hell.
He was so desperate to do things. Like the best wrestlers do things that look painful but aren't.
Yeah.
The mediocre wrestlers do things that look painful and are painful. And Mick Foley would do things that didn't look as painful as they actually were.
Oh, man. Like every other guy is smart enough. Just hit the thing with your arm and push it.
And that's all the fans really care about. It's the same pop.
It makes the sound. The sound is what matters.
Yes.
The sound and the visual of the steps going flying.
That's all anybody cares about.
Helmsley gets a chair and smashes Foley's leg with it up against the steps. JR says we're seeing hellfire and brimstone here. I always love when you hear announcers like hit on what's going to become a catchphrase earlier than it actually does.
Yeah. Like he's just like experimenting with that phrase, and it's not until Kane shows up that he like finds a place to use it. But like a lot of during this era, you hear JR like workshopping stuff that will become his thing later.
Back in the ring, Helmsley continues to work the leg. Mankind escapes the figure four. Helmsley goes for the pedigree, but Mankind double legs him. Helmsley kicks Mankind back into the corner. He hits it, falls down, and headbutts Helmsley in the nuts.
Yep.
Love that spot.
I've seen it a million times, and I love it every time.
Man, Triple H sells getting hit in the dick better than anybody.
It's his gift.
Yeah. Helmsley gets whipped into the corner. He ends up in the Tree of Woe. Mankind drops an elbow on him, then hits a pile driver for 2. On the floor, Helmsley hits a chair shot, and then he distracts the referee so that Chyna can hit a huge clothesline. Love how Foley is selling for Chyna here. Just no insecurity about it.
See, that's the thing, is that there's a couple of people in this company who you could genuinely have had real matches with her.
Yeah.
And, like, Foley is such an obvious one.
Oh, he totally
Foley will settle for anyone.
Yeah.
And, like, the clothesline that she hits him with here is, like, stiff.
Oh, he flat backs right on the floor.
Yeah, he, like, sprints into her arm and, like, flat backs. And, like, I don't know how much she put into it, but it looked like she murdered him.
Helmsley goes up to the top rope. Mankind hits the ropes and he gets crotched. And then Mankind puts on the mandible claw while Helmsley is still sitting on the top rope. Chyna picks Foley's ankle and crotches him around the ring post. And then they fight out into the crowd and they get counted out. That's not the strongest finish, but it makes sense to set up the cage match for SummerSlam.
And especially it sets up the rest of the show, which we'll get to.
Yeah. They go out into the crowd. They fight into the penalty box, which Vince is super into.
Yes. Like, what? That's a good idea.
I love how chaotic this brawl is. Like, there's barely any security. They can't get clear shots of what's going on. There's just random fans in the middle of the shot.
And they also do a great job. Like, obviously, they're just, like, standing backstage, like, having a cup of coffee. And then it's like, all right, time for you guys to fight again. And then, like, they just, like, start brawling again. But it genuinely feels like they've been brawling for, like, 90 minutes straight.
Oh, I once heard about an angle they did down in Florida where, like, it was like Kevin Sullivan and somebody are fighting as the show goes off the air. And they fight, like, out the back door of the arena. And then, like, the next week, the show starts and, like, the announcer's in the ring. And then, like, the other door slams open. And Sullivan and the same guy fight into the arena, like wearing the exact same clothes as last week.
That's genius.
It's so ridiculous, but yeah, the idea that they just fought for an entire week. They did something similar to this on a pay-per-view a couple of years ago. Do you remember when Ambrose and Harper had a match where, like, they fought backstage and, like, got into a car and drove off?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And like an hour later, they drive back into the arena and, like, get back into the ring.
See, that could have been done so much better, though, because I would have loved, like, the best moments with this kind of thing are when things feel, like, spontaneous but interesting. Like, if they had gone into, like, the Dunkin' Donuts next to the arena and started brawling, like, that would have been a legendary segment.
Well, and there's so much stuff you can do with this, and they do some of it here, but, like, somebody can be doing a promo backstage, and then they can fight into the middle of the promo.
Yeah. And then, like, their brawl just, like, sucks in a bunch of other people.
Yeah, like, they fight into, like, the Nation's locker room, and suddenly they're fighting with the Nation.
And then you just have, like, the show ends with, like, a 50-person brawl.
Yeah, that they triggered.
That's amazing.
Doc Hendrick narrates a package highlighting the Hearts participating in activities around Calgary this week. They were in a parade.
This is the most deeply boring video package I've ever seen in
They
my
were
entire
in a
life.
parade.
These assholes are in a parade. Who gives
Diana
a shit?
Hart Smith won Mrs. Calgary. Not Miss Calgary, Mrs. It's wholesome.
It's only for the married ladies.
They show the huge autograph signing they did where like 8,000 people showed up.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Calgary is not that big of a city.
Like, they don't get things like this.
No.
Like, you can't overstate, too. Like, the shows that Stu used to run were literally like the biggest thing that happened in Calgary all year.
Yeah, because who gives a fuck about the Calgary Flames?
Yeah, like literally, like this is the biggest deal. That's why Stu is such a legend in that part of the world. Is
He
that like
was their finest professional athlete.
yes,
And
like
then came Bret Hart.
he would run his shows during the Stampede in front of every man, woman, and child in Calgary because they'd all come out of the hills and out of the forests to come to the Stampede. And like that's how he made his name. And like that's why Bret is so beloved there, is that he's the one person that everyone in Calgary knew. It's a big deal.
They show that the American wrestlers did a tug of war against a team of Calgary firefighters, and the wrestlers won. Assholes.
That's a weird thing too. It's like, why show that? Like, it shows them like being like real chummy with the locals. Like, these are the heels. Don't show them doing that.
And like on some level, it's like, oh, shouldn't they, put the firefighters over? But it's like, no, you can't. You gotta beat them.
Yeah,
Bill Watts would have fired them all if they lost.
yeah. To some extent, that still exists. Like, it doesn't really exist these days. If they did that these days, like John Cena would let them win. But like back in those days, it was still like, all right, we got Ken Shamrock and people on this team. Y'all better fucking win this.
Now Hendricks interviews the Hart Foundation. He says that their reputation is on the line here tonight. And Steve Austin shows up, but he's restrained by Tony Garea and Pat Patterson. Bret says he doesn't want to fight Austin 5-on-1. He wants his team 5-on-5 in the ring tonight.
Here is what makes Steve Austin so amazing.
Yeah.
Like one of the many things is the idea that this person, independent of all other human beings on the face of the earth, would see 5 guys that he hates and immediately attack them. Just like
but
this
thing, he wasn't actually trying to get to him because there's no way like Pat and Tony Garea could have stopped him if he had wanted to get at him.
Right.
He was just fucking with him.
Exactly. But just the idea that he's putting in their heads that he's always there.
Yeah.
That he'll never stop being right there coming for him. Like that's the genius of Steve Austin, is he feels dangerous in a way that nobody else does. Even people who are much more dangerous than him, like Ken Shamrock, never feel that way.
And then we have one of the stranger matches in WWF pay-per-view history as Taka Michinoku takes on the great Sasuke.
This is bizarre in so many ways. Sasuke is not under contract to WWE in any way, shape, or form.
Nope.
They basically just borrowed him for this match.
Neither is Taka yet.
Oh, he's not even under contract yet?
No, he's still working. He works for Sasuke.
Oh, see, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Because
that's how they got that. So they booked Sasuke to get Taka, and that's why Sasuke gets to go over here.
And like they have these matches, and like Taka gets so over with the crowd, who doesn't give a shit until the match starts, but like Taka's killing it. Like
Taka's the star.
Yeah, they've never seen anything like this before.
Oh, man. If they just had been able to get some more horses for this division.
Yeah,
if they had the foresight to sign some guys before WCW got everybody.
I don't think Vince really thought this was going to work. And then when Taka gets over, he's like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Then they're like, okay, who can we get? Brian Christopher and Scott Putski.
And like they probably would have done more with AAA guys or like CMLL guys, but they got such a bad taste in their mouth from dealing with them before.
Yeah, dealing with those assholes.
And so like that's the problem, is that there's no other talent. But like this match is awesome.
Yeah, this rocks.
Like Sasuke is like, here's the thing. If you're not like a Puro fan from like 90s, like I'm not gonna like snob it up right now. But like Sasuke is legit probably a top 20 worker all time. And a lot of people have never seen more than like one of his matches.
I've seen this one probably.
Yeah, this one. Maybe they've seen the Super Junior thing that he wrestled. Like, if you weren't following like Michinoku Pro and Torimon and like all of that shit, you've probably never seen a Sasuke match, and it's totally understandable. This dude rules, and like right here you can see it. Like they tear the house down together.
So right as they're facing off in the middle of the ring and the match is about to start, Mankind and Helmsley fight back out into the arena.
I genuinely thought they weren't going to have the light heavyweight match. I was just like, oh, this is such like a WWE thing to do. It's just
like, oh, unfortunately, our extraordinary Japanese match has had to be canceled.
Scumbags.
Yeah, so they start wrestling. They start a little slow. Sasuke's working holds. Taka hits some drop kicks. He gets thrown out to the floor. Sasuke does like a springboard super kick down to the floor.
Yes.
Big kicks from Sasuke. Taka blocks a kick and hits a dragon screw, then a drop kick to the leg. Sasuke powders, and Taka hits an insane springboard plancha.
Yeah. Like, he literally clears like 15 feet. This is like Rob Van Dam jumping into the crowd in ECW. It's preposterous how far he goes, and the crowd pops gigantically for this. Like, like the best high flying they'd ever seen in this company up till this point is like what, Owen Hart?
Yeah, probably.
Like, this is blowing that shit away. Now, I would be remiss also if I did not mention that Jerry Lawler does the only good moment of commentary in his entire career in this match. Like, as they're setting up and they're getting started and like Sasuke's hitting Taka with kicks, Lawler actually says like, hey, Japanese wrestlers, it's a lot like the Antonio Inoki versus Muhammad Ali match. They like to lead with the kick the way that a boxer would with a jab, just to set them up. That's why they start slow. And I was like, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah.
Did you just do real commentary?
Jerry Lawler made a good point.
It made me think that he'd always been capable of that, and he just never bothered.
I also feel like that's the only time he spoke during this match.
Oh, yeah. Aside from saying repeatedly, oh, I got to put drop kicks into my repertoire.
It seems very clear to me that he was just like instructed that like you're not allowed to make racist jokes about the Japanese guys, and he had nothing else in his arsenal.
And he was just like, oh, well, I guess I'll just see you guys next match.
You know how old these guys are here?
No. Taka's got to be like 20.
Taka's 24, Sasuke's 28.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Taka's still wrestling.
Yeah, Taka's only like, what, 42 or something like that?
Yeah, but like he's literally the last person from the Attitude Era still regularly wrestling. He was just in Best of the Super Juniors this year.
Yeah. Sasuke, Taka and Sasuke go back into the ring. Taka hits a beautiful leaping Hurricane Rana.
Yep.
Sasuke then hits a springboard elbow, or like a handspring elbow in the ring. Taka rolls to the floor. Sasuke follows with an Asai moonsault.
Everything's just so goddamn crisp and beautiful in this match, too. Like, I've seen a lot of Asai moonsaults in my day. This one hits, though.
Taka comes back with the Michinoku driver, but Sasuke kicks out. Sasuke then hits a springboard moonsault in the ring, a huge over-the-shoulder power bomb, and then the Tiger suplex for the pin. Awesome match, and they totally won the crowd over.
Oh, the crowd was going nuts for that. And you can even hear in Vince's voice as the match goes on that he's getting won over. That he's just like, wow, this is crazy. This is incredible. As like JR is just like working overtime to like tell people who the fuck these guys are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who pushed for this originally, whether it was Bruce, whether it was Jim, whether it was Cornette, whoever. It wasn't Vince.
This is a good point. I don't know whose idea the Cruiserweight division was. I think I've heard JR really wanted Sasuke as the face of it, and Pritchard really wanted Taka. I don't know who's right and who's wrong there. I don't think there's any way Sasuke was going to come over and like work full time in America, though.
Well, that's the thing. Sasuke wasn't an option. He ran his own company.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't going anywhere. Like, he was a member of the fucking Congress in Japan at some point. Like, he's not going anywhere. That's why Bruce wanted Taka, because he was available.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, they wanted basically all of those Japanese indie talents they could get. They weren't going to get Sasuke except occasionally. And anytime Sasuke came over, he was going to want to get put over. That was the problem with bringing in Japanese talent, is that anybody worth bringing over would have had to win. And that's just not good for business.
We go back to the parking lot where Mankind and Helmsley are still fighting.
God, I love it. Just throwing each other recklessly into shit. This is back in the days where, like, if people throw each other into like guardrails and stuff now, it's very careful. Like, they like are given time to like take their own bump. Like, they'll be given like a little bit of a runway to like do a flip or like take a back bump or whatever they're gonna do. Here, these guys are just throwing each other like head first, like from point blank range into like car windows and shit. Like, there's no safety to this.
Helmsley is cut above his eye. He throws Mankind into a bunch of kegs and then smashes a shovel across his back. He goes for the pedigree on a crate, but he gets backdropped. Referees finally get in between them and break up the brawl.
Just so good. Like, this is just great stuff.
Then Doc Hendricks interviews Paul Bear and Vader. Bear says that Undertaker is a murderer!
Murderer!
Bear says Vader will beat Undertaker just like he did back at the Royal Rumble in January.
Mm.
And then we've got our WWF Championship match as The Undertaker defends against Vader. Big pop for The Undertaker.
Huge.
Maybe the biggest of his career at this point.
Like, he's just awesome. And like, this is right around the time where the respect for The Undertaker starts becoming like a tangible thing for him. And it's very cool. Like,
everybody just kind of realizes how much shit he's waded through to get to this moment.
Yeah, and now
how many horrible feuds he had, terrible opponents, and now he gets his moment in the spotlight, but not really, because he's a total mid-card champion.
Yeah, and also, like, I think people had always wanted, like, when you talk to people about The Undertaker, a lot of people say, like, I grew up and he was my favorite wrestler, he's my favorite wrestler. Like, a lot of people say that. And I guess there's really not that many opportunities to cheer for him in matches before this, because his matches are all fucking terrible. So, like, whenever he gets, like, a decent match, people lose their shit.
I love that Taker's got pyro when he brings up the lights.
Yes.
I loved the loud bang as the lights come back on.
It's a great idea. They should have stuck with that.
I don't know why that went away. They start off, Taker is dealing on Vader, hits a big clothesline, leg drop, rights and lefts, and then a huge clothesline that sends Vader out to the floor.
It must be said that Vader sells more in this match than I feel like he ever has in any other match in his career. Like, he's like bumping for Taker, getting thrown out of the ring left and right. I don't know if that's just because he, like everyone else on the planet Earth, just respects Taker so much, or if he just knows he's got to put in a good performance to get back in the good graces of the company. Whatever it is, he's working his ass off.
As they fight outside, Paul Bear is just following Undertaker around, yelling murder at him.
Yes, he is.
I just love it. I think it's the night after this that Bear reveals that Kane is alive.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Undertaker's got him like hung upside down and he's beating on him and he's just like, you're going to tell the truth or I'm going to kill you right here, right now. And then he tells the truth that Kane is alive.
You know, everyone knows the story of The Undertaker and how this whole shit, like bizarre shit, goes down. But a part of it that's never mentioned enough is the fact that, like, Kane coming in and Paul Bearer doing this ruins The Undertaker's one real moment in the spotlight, his dream to be WWE champion. And, like, when Kane comes in, that's when he loses the belt to Shawn, right?
No, he loses it to Brett at SummerSlam.
Oh, that's right.
When he's fighting Shawn, it's to get the shot at Brett to get the title back.
Right. But, like, that's what Paul Bearer is derailing. It's like The Undertaker is broken free from him and is finally successful, and Paul Bearer can't stand it.
Undertaker goes after Bear, and Vader cuts him off, and then Vader's in control for the next couple minutes. Taker goes for a choke slam, but he gets kicked in the nuts. Taker recovers. He goes for the tombstone, but Vader is supposed to like reverse it the way you reverse the tombstone, where you end up tombstoning them. But he can't hold him, and they just kind of fall down.
It actually is kind of miraculous because they fall down in such a way that they wind up doing like a backwards victory roll with Undertaker on top, and so he just goes for a pin. So it doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
It could have been ugly.
Vader sets up for the Vader bomb, but Taker sits up, punches him in the dick, and then hits a huge choke slam off the second rope.
Vader gets up for this.
This looked great, and somehow this only gets a 2 count. I thought that should have been the finish.
It should have been. Also, like, well, go ahead. We'll talk about it after it's over.
Taker hits another choke slam. He covers and only gets 2. Then there's a tombstone by Taker. It's insane that he tombstones somebody that fat.
Okay, here's the thing. Is that like the choke slam off the second rope seems like the perfect way to end it because it's safe.
Yeah.
The tombstone. Okay, here's the thing. When Taker takes you up for the tombstone, there's a brief moment where he's holding you up with one arm. That's just the way that the move has to work while he's adjusting you and getting your legs around his head. There's a moment where he's holding Vader's whole fat fucking ass head first over the ground with one arm, and you can see the grimace on his face as he's trying desperately to hold him. And in that moment, I wonder if it ran through his head that we should have fucking gone home after the choke slam. This is not safe.
Yeah,
their obsession with having him do this to people who were way too big to do this to could have gotten somebody paralyzed.
What?
Cough, Goldberg, cough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Did he ever tombstone anybody else, like even close to this size? I think he tombstoned Mark Henry.
I say he didn't do this to Bundy.
Fuck no.
No,
he Bundy with like a clothesline.
He definitely tombstoned Henry, but Henry was he was more of a worker. He was probably easier to get up.
Yeah. Henry wasn't as big as Vader at that point.
Did he ever try to tombstone Show?
No. No, Show's too tall. I don't think you can tombstone somebody that tall.
I don't think so either. He always had trouble with Kane, and like Kane's not that tall.
Yeah. He did tombstone Sid. Sid is pretty tall. Sid's probably 6'8".
But he's not that heavy.
Yeah.
He's just lanky.
Yeah. I thought this was a really good match. This is probably the best match of Undertaker's career to this point.
I think that definitely was. And
maybe the Diesel match?
It's without question the best match of Vader's run in WWE.
It's not a ton of competition for that.
But like these are two guys who we kind of unanimously consider to be two of the best big man workers of all time. So like it's kind of a dream match, but like you wouldn't think of it that way just because of where they were in the company at the time. But they deliver. This is great.
There are still 45 minutes left in the show, and for once, that's not a bad thing.
Like, when they go into this with 45 minutes left, I'm like, oh my God. I thought, okay, first of all, I thought this whole time that this was an elimination match, like Survivor Series style.
Yeah.
So when I find out that it's not, I'm like, what, 45 minutes for one fall?
Oof. So first, they show a video package on the rise of factions in the WWF.
Yes.
The Hart Foundation, the Nation, DOA, and Los Boricuas. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, you definitely want to compare your top heel stable to all those other things.
And Michael Hayes interviews the American team. We get promos from Goldust, Shamrock, and LOD. But then Austin just walks out without saying a word.
Yeah. Austin's just going to get him some.
Then they introduce the Farmer's Daughters to sing "Oh Canada," which is a great touch.
Yes. To do it in the middle of the show instead of at the beginning, like right before the main event, is because it just gets the fans like just pumped up with Canadian spirit.
Then Howard Finkel introduces the premier of Alberta, who is the equivalent of the governor of the state. And then he introduces Stu and Helen Hart, who are sitting in the front row.
Guess which one of those people gets a bigger pop?
Oh, fuck. Stu's so much big. Stu's bigger than the prime minister.
Oh, it's not even a fucking question.
And it's main event time. We've got Steve Austin, Goldust, Ken Shamrock, Hawk and Animal against Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Jim Neidhart, the British Bulldog, and Brian Pillman. 10-man tag, one fall to a finish.
Just great.
Goldust is out first. He gets heat. Shamrock and LOD get cheers, and then Austin gets a lot of heat.
A lot of heat.
And he is soaking it up.
He's so happy. This is so.
He always wanted to be a heel. He never wanted to be a face.
Just imagine that you're Steve Austin and you make it to literally the top of the wrestling industry, but you're miserable because all you've ever wanted to be is the top heel. That's the real thing that happened.
Pillman is out first for his team. He gets a gigantic pop.
Yeah, he does. And like he's just like soaking it in. He's like waving to the fans, like, give me more, give me more.
I love that each guy gets their own entrance, but they stand and wait at the top of the ramp for the next guy.
Yes.
So they can walk in as a team.
So like it just builds on itself, you know?
Yeah. Neidhart is out second, and he gets a main event level pop.
Oh God, yeah. And it's fucking Neidhart, and he looks terrible.
He sucks. Bulldog is out next. Again, just a ridiculous pop.
And then, obviously, the biggest pop is Bret. But when Owen comes out,
reaction for Owen.
They lose it for Owen. He's the kid brother of the whole territory. And he's out with his fucking Slammy Award.
Oh, I just love the Slammy Award and the leather jacket and like the shitty short haircut.
Yes.
He looks like such a dick.
He really, it's beautiful though.
Bulldog with his vest, Neidhart with his leather jacket, Pillman with his t-shirt and his leather vest. What a trashy look.
Just trash.
And then Bret finally comes out and literally the building shakes.
Here's the thing.
It's like a jet engine taking off.
There are moments in this show, and this is one of them, where the crowd is going so crazy that the picture that you're watching is just vibrating all over the screen. Like literally the screen itself is vibrating because the cameras can't deal with how loud this place is being. Like you always used to hear about old school football stadium would literally shake when people got crazy enough. This feels like that.
Bret is clearly limping. You can see he's not 100%, but there's no way he wasn't going to make this match.
Oh, this is the dream. Like his whole career's been leading to this.
I just love, as you see them all together at the top of the ramp like that, getting this reaction, you're just like, there's no way these guys can be beat tonight.
No.
Like, who thinks they're going to beat the Hearts in Canada? In Calgary.
It would have been deeply, deeply funny to me if they had pulled like a Flair and Charlotte and jobbed them out.
Oh, God. The thing is, today it feels like they might.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because they love beating guys in their hometowns.
It would have just been like just Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels single-handedly beating all 45 Hearts. Super kicking Blade Hart and everything.
Well, that kid deserved it. JR mentions there's a camera crew at ringside filming a documentary on Bret. That's Wrestling with Shadows.
Yes, which will turn out to be one of the most fascinating documentaries ever. And here it's just kind of like, oh, hey, there's a documentary crew.
Bret and Austin start off with a slugfest. Bret wins it, and he proceeds to just stomp the hell out of Austin.
Yep.
Then Austin rakes Bret's eyes and stomps him. Austin goes for the $1 Million Dream, but Bret does that spot where he pushes off the ropes. like he did at Survivor Series, and Austin kicks out at 2. You can see his knees are not quite there because he couldn't really pull it off.
Yeah.
Didn't have the crispness it normally did.
It's a shame. It really is, because he so badly wants to be himself here. Like,
Yeah.
this would be the ultimate time for a classic Brett performance, and he just doesn't have it.
Austin misses a straddle and bounces off the ropes. That allows Brett to tag in Neidhart. Austin hits him with a Luthaz press and a series of punches. Austin then tags in Shamrock. He levels Neidhart with a kick after Neidhart like taunted him and like squared up with him. Neidhart's such an idiot.
Yes, he really is.
He goes for the ankle lock, but Pillman breaks that up. Pillman tags in, and it's kind of just uncomfortable to watch him because he can barely move.
Yeah, they do like some comedy spots to try to protect him, but like he's just not much he can do.
Yeah. He hits a backbreaker and he grabs Shamrock's arm and like taps it out, claiming Shamrock gave up. Then Owen and Goldust tag in. Owen hits an Insiguri. There's a really loud Austin sucks chant at this point.
Yeah, they hate him. And like you can just see like a big grin on Austin's face.
Yeah, he loves it. Hawk tags in. He suplexes Owen. Bulldog tags in. He hits a gigantic suplex on Hawk.
Yeah.
Then he hits the running power slam, but Goldust breaks up the pin. Brett tags in, and him and Animal go at it. Goldust tags in. He gets put in the Tree of Woe in the Heart's corner, and they all stomp him.
And there's the pop when this happens.
Yes.
The crowd pops so hard that, again, the camera starts to vibrate. It's amazing.
All 10 guys get in the ring and fight, but order is pretty quickly restored. Owen tags in. He hits a beautiful missile drop kick. He goes for a Hurricane Rana, but he gets hit with a power bomb by Animal. And then a power slam by Animal. And then the Doomsday Device. But the pin gets broken up, and once again, all 10 guys start brawling in the ring.
Yep.
Austin goes after Owen's knee. He wraps it around the ring post, and then he nails it with a chair shot.
Love it.
At this point, Bruce Hart takes a shot at Austin as Brett runs Austin off, and Owen is helped to the back due to his knee injury. We got to talk about Bruce Hart here.
Okay. So the first time you see Bruce Hart on screen during this night is they're showing Stu and Helen in the crowd, and the camera pans over to them, and you see this total dickhead standing next to them in a bomber jacket and aviator sunglasses, who is obviously Bruce.
God, he looks like a dick.
And he's like standing in front of Stu to try to get attention on camera, and it's embarrassing. But that's nothing compared to what he does later in this match. The man goes into business for himself here. Is that fair to say?
Oh, totally. Yeah, he's totally thinking, like, I'm going to get over here, and I'm going to get signed, and I'm going to be the new member of the Hart Foundation.
Bruce has spent basically the entire 90s trying to get into WWE. Like, he's been, like, sending his own story ideas in. Like, he's sure that he could make it if he just gets, like, onto the roster. Like, he wants to feud with Brett and all of this shit. And, like, Bruce Hart, and I'm sorry if Bruce Hart is listening to this. Please close your ears for just a moment. Bruce Hart fucking sucks.
Yeah, he does.
He's the worst. He's literally, like, as bad as you can imagine a Hart being. And to have him constantly... He inserts himself in this match. Like, I feel like it was always supposed to dissolve.
Oh, yeah. Like, they're supposed to get involved. Like, they want to do the spot where all the Harts get to fight. Like,
Right.
Which is a cool idea. But, like, Bruce goes so much further than he's supposed to.
Well, he, like, jumps the fucking guardrail. Like, right away. And, like, Austin clearly isn't ready for him. Because, like, Austin doesn't seem to know what the fuck to do with it. Because, like, Bruce isn't selling. Like, Austin's, like, hitting him with live rounds, and Bruce is just refusing to sell it. It's like, what do you do? Austin just walks away from him.
Austin tags in. He gets beaten on by the entire Hart Foundation. but then Pillman gets caught in the wrong corner and ganged up on. Austin hits Pillman with the stunner, but Pillman's able to roll out of the ring. Brett then wraps Austin's knee around the ring post and smashes it with a fire extinguisher, then locks him in the ring post figure 4.
Yes.
And now Austin has to be helped to the back. I thought this was kind of strange.
Yeah, like 2 different times in the same match, they help somebody to the back. It's weird.
Yeah. I can totally see the logic of having Owen get taken out and having him, get to come back and be heroic. But like in the meantime, the babyface team is at a disadvantage. I don't really know what the point of taking Austin out is, other than maybe like literally to bring the crowd down a little bit before you get the crescendo at the end.
Yeah, maybe just to like, and it kind of shows off how relentless he is. Like, even though he really should be in the back, he's going to come out and try to fight everybody by himself again. But it's still weird. Like, it doesn't need to happen.
Then Shamrock and Brett tag in, and Shamrock works on Brett's leg. Bulldog tags in, and he beats down Shamrock. Goldust tags in, he hits a Bulldog on the Bulldog. Austin limps back down the ramp. He tags in against Brett, stomps a mud hole in his ass. Brett goes for the sharpshooter, but Austin breaks it up. And now Austin gets Brett in the sharpshooter, but Owen comes down the ramp to break it up. Brett does an awesome thing where he like jumps over Austin and rolls and tags out to Owen.
Yes, very cool.
They go back to the floor where Austin gets into it again with Bruce Hart and some other Harts I don't recognize.
Yeah, I think maybe Keith was over there. Like, every single person with a drop of Hart blood was in attendance here.
And then Austin gets back into the ring where he gets rolled up and pinned by Owen. Very abruptly. Almost feels like maybe they cut the match a little short here.
I do wonder genuinely. Like, I think this was probably the ending that was going to happen. I wonder if they called it because things were getting a little too chaotic with the Hearts outside the ring. And they were like, we better nip this in the bud before Bruce ruins this whole fucking match.
Yeah, and like before Stu or Helen gets hurt, like that would be my concern is you're fighting right over by them and they are really old and really frail.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to be able to get out of the way if somebody gets like thrown into them.
Well, they also have this huge, big celebration to do at the end.
Yeah.
So, like, they
need some time for that.
This match ends with, like, 15 minutes left in the broadcast.
Yeah. It's absolute chaos. Everybody's fighting everybody. The Hart family members just aren't fucking selling anything. Like, Bruce is trying to fight everybody. Security's getting in there trying to break it up. Like, Bruce is fighting the Road Warriors. He's fighting Austin. Like, Jesus, sell, you fucking prick.
And, like, he's throwing, like, live rounds and, like, really, like, trying to, like, shoot on Road Warrior Hawk and stuff. And, like, all of the members of, like, the heel team just kind of stop doing anything.
Yeah, because they're just
they don't, like, sell.
This.
They don't sell. They don't, like, go out and, like, act dismayed that they lost. Like, the Road Warriors literally just, like, put their hands down, like, this is bullshit, and then wander off.
I kind of wish they just kicked his ass.
That's the thing. Like, you can't kill a Hart in the middle of this. Like, you'll start a riot.
Yeah.
And, like, it's bad for the company. But, like, Hawk was standing there taking shots from Bruce Hart, being like, I could destroy you with one punch, dude.
God. Security finally gets in and breaks it up. The Americans retreat as the Hart Foundation are announced as the winners. Austin comes back with a chair and hits Neidhart, but then he gets swarmed by all the Harts and beaten up and stomped on.
But this is beautiful because literally, and like, thank God Jim Ross is on the call here because Austin comes in with a chair while there's like 5 Harts and a bunch of security, and he just tries to fight everyone. As Ross is just screaming like, he doesn't care. He doesn't give a damn. He's going to come anyway.
He's so awesome.
Yes. Like this is as much a part of getting Steve Austin over as anything Steve Austin himself does. Is Jim Ross contextualizes what Steve Austin is doing so perfectly. It's like, he's relentless. You'll never get him to stop. He's the rattlesnake. It's brilliant. And then they handcuff him.
Yeah. Yeah. So these fat ass Keystone cops get in the ring. Take forever to get the handcuffs on Austin.
Well, they're like fucking around and like they're like talking shit to the Road Warriors in the aisle and like they're big men.
Jesus. These are definitely real Calgary cops.
Yes, absolutely.
These are not indie wrestlers.
They're enjoying this way too much.
They drag Austin away. We get a great moment as Austin is like bending over so he can flip off the crowd while he's handcuffed with his hands behind his back.
God, that's beautiful. The small touches.
And then the massive celebration begins. First, it's Stu and Helen getting into the ring, and then like the wives and the kids, and then the cousins, and just everybody. There's literally like 50 people in the ring by the end of this.
Yes. Like all of the kids that you know, like Natty's in there, and like TJ's in there, and Blade Hart, and everybody. Yeah. Teddy may have been there.
Teddy, Harry Smith, they got everybody out there. I'm sure there's some randos who just jumped in there. Like, security wasn't stopping anybody at this point. They don't know who all these people are.
But it's also one of the weirdest celebrations I've ever seen because the Harts don't seem that enthusiastic. Brett's just literally wandering around the ring. Like, Owen's like hanging out with his kids, and he like pulls them into the corner and keeps them separate from everyone else.
Yeah, doesn't want him to get stepped on.
Like, it takes forever to get Stu and Helen in because they're ancient.
So old.
And like, but like, it's a very like somber victory. Like, it's not, nobody's like cheering. No one's having a great time. They're just like, here's our whole family.
This family doesn't get along very well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is you feel like Brett's just trying to keep an eye on everybody to make sure they don't fuck up.
That's so much of Brett's life has just been like dealing with his siblings exploiting his parents.
Yeah, just like looking around like, where's Bruce? Where's Bruce? Where is he?
What's Bruce getting into? If you read Brett's his feelings on his family are very clear. His siblings, not the best people.
Well, let's synthesize this. Bret Hart is not necessarily a good person. I think that's fair to say. He might even agree to that to some extent or another. But every other Hart except Owen is a fucking scumbag.
There's an integrity to Bret Hart. Took care of his parents, didn't steal their money like his siblings did.
Yeah, he's a crybaby, but he's still a decent person. The other ones are fucking scumbags.
Just
Smith Hart, Bruce Hart, Keith Hart, trash. Again, sorry, Bruce, if you're out there that we just keep dunking on you.
I love the generations of Harts we're seeing. I mean, how many generations do we have here?
God.
We've got Stu and Helen. We've got their kids, the wrestlers. Then we've got their kids. I don't know. Are there any great-grandkids by this point?
There might be, honestly.
Could be. Some of the, I don't know how old are the older ones? How old are, Bruce and Keith at this point?
40s, I think.
Yeah, they're not young. They might have a kid who has a kid at this point.
And it's so funny because, Lawler makes a comment at one point that, all of these 50 people in the ring come from Stu and Helen.
Yeah.
And it's true.
That is how that works.
Stu and Helen had 25 kids.
Yeah, what'd they have? 8 kids?
Yeah, shit. And they all had a shit ton of kids.
Had a bunch of kids too. Yeah, massive family. Just such a cool moment. And you've got multi-generational families in the crowd too.
Yeah.
There's old dudes who grew up watching Stu Hart, and then middle-aged dads who grew up watching Bret Hart in Calgary. And now they're kids who just know Bret Hart as the WWF champion and, from the WWF.
Yeah. Here's the beautiful thing about this. And it genuinely is beautiful. Is that, like I said earlier, the Stampede, this is like a small town county fair, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone in the whole county, even the people who don't live in like the main part, who live on the outskirts, they come in for the fair, right? This is like that times a million. The Stampede, Calgary is such like a far-flung wild west place. Alberta is basically Montana, but like a million times bigger. So like people are coming out of the fucking woodwork who normally never talk about anything. And like the one thing they all have in common is that they've all been watching Stampede wrestling their whole lives. So like grandparents are pulling aside grandsons and they're like, "Hey kid, see that Stu Hart? I used to watch him when I was your age." And it's like it's a beautiful thing for Canada and for Alberta and for the Hart family. This is a triumphant moment. It's the last one they'll ever have. All of
Yeah.
this will turn to ashes within a year.
This is the probably the last happy moment this family had together.
Yeah.
It's not long after this things get real dark. I mean, first the Montreal screw job, and then,
Owen.
2 years after this, Owen's dead, and Bulldog has his back injury and his drug problem and is dead a couple years after this. Neidhart has his problems.
Yep.
We get the revelations about Bulldog's marriage and how messed up that was.
Like Brett's book comes out and buries the whole family. Stu and Helen are dead. Like it's right now is like the happiest time since that moment. And it's just because Brett's finally in a decent place.
Yeah.
But the rest of the family is still like there is no family. It's just Brett.
Yeah. Yeah. But just one perfect moment here.
The fucking even the next generation are scattered to the nine winds. Natty's the only one who had a real career.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like TJ was going places and then breaks his neck and his career's over just like that.
Teddy Hart had the world in his hands.
Jesus Christ, Teddy Hart.
And he's the craziest human being who ever walked the face of the earth. And if he had just been a dickhead but not totally insane, he'd be a top star now.
And then I don't know what happened to Harry Smith exactly.
He didn't have enough personality, so they just let him go. He went to Japan. He got some more personality. He tags with Lance Archer a lot. He's still
what a team.
He's still not anybody that they need. Like they actually carved out a nice space for themselves. They are a pretty decent team, but he doesn't have any more personality now than he had then. He'll just always be a pale imitation of his dad.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Canadian Stampede. What a unique and special and great show.
Yeah, if we didn't put it over enough as the show went on, every match on this show is worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of like quick star rate these matches, I'd say the main event was 5 stars.
Yep.
The Undertaker Vader match was probably like 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
Taka Sasuke like 4, and I'd probably go 4 stars for Triple H and Mankind too.
Especially including all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about as good an average match quality as you're going to get out of those 4 matches.
Yeah, and like all of like the promo videos and like the hype packages, while they're a little corny, like they're very welcome. Like it puts over all the matches very well. They put the Brett versus Austin feud over like gangbusters here, and it's great. Like this is just as complete a 2-hour wrestling program as you can see.
The atmosphere is incredible. The crowd is one of the hottest I've ever seen.
Yes.
What else springs to mind? Like the Money in the Bank crowd in Chicago was crazy for Punk, but like this crowd was rabid the entire show.
Yeah. They weren't just rabid for their Canadian heroes. Like they were just excited to be here. And like Calgary was always a good market for them. But like they were just so excited to be at this show where their heroes were going to be that they cheered for everything. It was great.
Yeah. It's such a tumultuous and crazy time for the company where they have a substitute in their world title match. They had to substitute 2 guys in the main event. They have guys working through injuries all over the card. They have a totally unpromoted and random Japanese match in the middle of the show, and
Yep.
somehow it's all brilliant.
And that's the thing. When you improvise, you can get crap or you can get genius. And when you're not allowed to improvise, you don't get either.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said everything we can said about this, unless you have any final thoughts.
I don't. Like, the Hart Foundation is, like, even as much as it gets put over, it's still even a little underrated in wrestling history. That was the thing that WWE needed so badly at this time. That was, you need heat in order to build stars. You need heat in order to build a following. Heat is what draws people back to watch a show. Like, a hot baby face is amazing, but without heat to go up against them, it can't really work. And nothing on these shows had heat until the Hart Foundation. And then after this, DX with Shawn Michaels will carry that. And then after this, Vince McMahon will carry that. And that's the foundation upon which you build the entire spectacular era that comes. And Bret Hart can't get enough credit for actually pulling this off. The one time in his career he really did.
And, I mean, this is really when the company starts to turn things around.
Yeah.
Like, this is the genesis of the Attitude Era, of the boom period, is right here. I feel like this is ground zero for it. This great run of USA versus Canada, and this stretch of shows where one week they're in America and the next week they're in Canada, and the reactions are totally reversed from week to week.
Yeah. And, like, just functionally, Steve Austin couldn't have become Steve Austin without something as strong as the Hart Foundation, without something as strong as DX, without something as strong as Vince McMahon and The Rock. So, like, as he feuds with Bret, and it's such a beautiful feud, like, this moment right here is when it all begins and it all coalesces at the same time. Like, it's amazing to watch it happen. If you go back and watch these Raws and watch it happen kind of in real time, like, it's a miracle that it all works out, because this isn't what they wanted at all, but this is what they got.
Every Raw, there's so many great legendary segments on these Raws.
Yes.
I mean, gotta give credit to Vince Russo here.
He's a mad genius.
Yeah.
He was pumping it out at this point.
Was really working here.
Yep.
And there's other people involved at this point too. Cornette's still involved, JR, Pritchard. It is more of a committee at this point, but I'd say Russo's probably at the head of it.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's Canadian Stampede. And next week we will have a not as good but still interesting pay-per-view to cover as we check out what was going on the other side of the tracks in July of 1997 with Bash at the Beach 1997. And you know what that means? Dennis Rodman.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Rodman and Hogan against the Giant and Lex Luger. It's another episode of Long Q's Talk 90s Sports.
I'm so excited. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. We also get the insane conclusion to the Chris Benoit-Kevin Sullivan feud.
Which is one of the most insane feuds, just for backstage reasons, in the history of wrestling.
And just all sorts of other 1997 WCW goodness. Roddy Piper versus Ric Flair, some cruiserweight matches, a Mortal Kombat match. What could be better?
We haven't been back to WCW in so long, and I know that you've missed it. And now that we've covered Bobby Lashley, I'm happy for you that we're going back.
Exactly. Ooh, so that is what you have to look forward to next time. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again.